All Hazards Dispersions webinar entitled Open State Feet Response for New York City OEM Post-Sandy Experiences. I'd like to thank New York City Office of Emergency Management for working with us to provide this speech to all of you. And I'm going to turn the mic over to Tom Moran, the Executive Director of the All Hazards Dispersions.
Hi, thank you, Laura. Let me welcome everyone to our webinar. I especially want to thank our speakers, Dina Maniotis and Ira Tenenbaum from New York City. There are many others involved, certainly, but we wanted to thank New York City for taking the time, as well as all of you. Last month, Dean and myself and some folks from New Jersey were in Seattle talking about the post-Sandy experiences, lessons learned, innovations, and so forth. And we wanted to organize a webinar around capturing some of this so that we can use for future planning and education efforts of regulators, if you will, private sector owner-operators, academic research, nonprofits, and so forth. What you're going to hear is mind-blowing. I sat, as Dina was going through this in New York, in Seattle, I was just overwhelmed at how so many people are involved and so quickly people have to scale up to respond. And of course, New York City's been at this a long time. Ira's been working with the private sector for quite a while, and it's just, I think you'll find this not only interesting, but fascinating as far as what you might take from this for your organizations to learn from their experiences. So with that, I just want to introduce our speakers. I'm not sure who's going first, but I want to thank you again, Ira and Dina, for taking the time to present. So Ira, you're first on the list, so I guess you're going to go first.
First of all, thank you very much for having us and giving us the opportunity to share some of our experiences with the group. Dean and I spent a lot of time in the EOC and active, before, during, and after Sandy, and certainly while you're in the midst of an event, as everyone on the phone knows, you sort of do what has to be done, and you make it work. And then only afterwards you really take a look back and say, I wonder where that came from. We are, of course, I should note that New York City is in the midst of its worst heat wave since 2008, and we have activated our on-call team, which is a critical member, and we have more than 400 pools that are open in the city. So Dean is going to be in and out of the phone, supporting it where possible, and hopefully she'll be here for the Q&A session at least to give some feedback. With that, I wanted to just give a little bit of perspective before the storm to set the stage. I know many of you are on the call already know a lot of this, but just to remind everyone, if you go to the just again the first slide right there, the dramatic picture of Lower Manhattan after the power outage with the bright light of One World Financial Center, One World Trade Center actually rising there at Battery Park City with power. It was quite one thing after another, and certainly we'll talk a little bit about cascading impact across the city. Go to the next slide, please. So just a little bit, just to sort of summarize New York City in a single slide. There's a lot going on here on any given day, and the important thing I think that bears reminding is that typically when people think of storm surge or a hurricane coming in, there's a lot of attention that's paid towards the coastal areas, and those areas certainly got walloped with Hurricane Sandy and Superstorm Sandy. But the entire city was impacted in some way or another for an extended period of time. But even folks who had power, transportation disruptions, connectivity, the old story of the ankle connected to the leg, and the leg connected to the knee, and the knee connected to the hip, etc. All worked all the way through for a city the magnitude of New York, and areas that weren't associated were actively involved in supporting the recovery throughout the event. So everything in the city, everywhere in the city, we had shelters open, we had people who were transported and placed from their coastal homes or nursing homes and hospitals, moved further into the city. So it was a full city event. If you go to the next slide. So a little bit about who we are, OEM. Our key mission, as you see, essentially our mission statement on the screen. We plan and prepare for emergencies. We bring everyone together. We don't tell agencies what they do or how to do it. We make sure that everyone understands what their responsibilities are when it comes to the big city, the big picture for the city and the coastal storm plan overall. We are a coordinating body, and that leads right into the second part, which is we coordinate the response and recovery. We make sure everyone's at the table to share information, bring full information together, paint the picture for executives, for agency executives, and for city halls so they can make decisions that are necessary, that are going to guide the city. We collect and disseminate information. The bottom right over there. We are data hounds. We want to pull as much information together as possible and use it to inform those decisions and inform the actions that we take. We'll talk a little bit about how that came together and hence this form, but certainly that was a critical part in not only in the post-storm recovery and post-storm actions to make sure that everyone had the information they needed throughout the event. What actually we see there in that bottom right is a screenshot from a couple years ago. We had a 2010 tornado that tore through parts of Staten Brooklyn, and Queens. And the little blue dots there are reports of tree damage or trees down that were called into our 311 system to grab that data within a couple of hours, and we're able to use GIS, put it on a overlay, and be able to really guide the response and let people know where we need to focus instead of just sort of anecdotal feelings. We had some hard data to guide that response that supports us with everything that we do. We really look for ways to collect that data and use that data to inform our decisions. And of course, on the bottom left, educating the public and informing the public about how they can prepare for emergency support and what they can do after. And all that is to do all that, we leverage our SIMS, our citywide incident management system, that really is the backbone to everything that all of our agencies respond with a single system under which we can all operate and integrate our resources. If you go to the next slide, please. So, I love putting this slide up for dramatic effect. I think when we all see the information comes out of the National Weather Service, and everyone's watching storms far out. You see the storms of probability and all sorts of modeling that goes on, and all that can change in pretty quickly. On the left there, goes for south. Models, the noodle models, Getty models, all pointing out the ocean, except for that one really frustratingly annoying European model that seems right there going up towards the Virginia, the light green, and really, what people who take it in the past would probably, think of it as an outlier. Looking more towards what's going on in the middle. And then, a few days later, so definitely something to be paying attention to, but not something that's an imminent threat. And of course, just a couple days later, you see what's on the right, all those models turn in and face towards the East Coast in a dramatic fashion. And so not only were we looking at a storm now that was going to be more significant, it actually was more like a feature of our worst case scenario, which unlike Irene, which came up the coast, what alerted us was the direct impact over Atlantic City, New Jersey, and that for us is the worst case. So I just wanted to paint that picture, let people know what we were looking at. And the reason we keep on preparing, the reason we make sure our plans are up to speed is so that in the span of 2 days, and all that changes, we're able to turn on a lot of what we have ready to go, and the relationships that we've built and the time we've spent investing in building those relationships with the private sector and with other agencies. We need less and less lead time. Of course, we want as much lead time as possible, but we have to accept the fact that sometimes it's just not going to happen. If you go to the next slide, again, not to be too dramatic, but the reality is that when we look at storms now here in New York City, we're taking a new approach because historically historically, we really looked at the categories for, right, the category 1, 2, 3, or 4 that gave us an idea of what areas we needed to evacuate, so A, B, or C, and we did pretty much a lot of our decisions on the category. And what we've learned from working with the National Weather Service and the Hurricane Center and some of our experts here, we've seen, their truth that, of course, we know now that the direction of the storm is as important as the category of the storm. So a category 1 storm, like green northeast, coming up the coast, pretty much, brings about 5 to surge, which anyone who was here during Irene, in the area, really saw a little bit of flooding here and there, but it wasn't as bad as people thought it could be. And then, of course, the category 1 storm that was built for a while, Sandy, comes in with that different west-northwest direction, which straight, inland, with that hard left turn, and we're suddenly looking at 12.5 to 13 feet of surge, and then I think that caught a lot of people, certainly folks who died at home before the evacuation orders, that changed a lot of them, themselves, they didn't have water during Irene, tons of water. If you go to the next slide. So, a lot happened, a lot of, preparation, a lot of activation, the initial phases of getting things up running. Obviously, I'm not going to jump into that right now because that's the result of a whole nother call. But here's what we got at the end. Just to sum it up, and it's really hard to sum up what we've done for 3.5 months of round-the-clock operations in just an hour. But the data here, 600 million gallons of water and infrastructure, and that's really that's public sector infrastructure that's not necessarily factoring in completely the private sector buildings, the high-rise buildings that were inundated with water has put out 50,000 homes destroyed. The debris that was generated and the customers without power, it was a magnitude that could have been, it could have been overwhelming if we hadn't put in place in advance so many of the efforts that we did to prepare and really spend a lot of time thinking about these challenges. And as much time as we've been thinking about challenges, everyone who's on the call sure knows, there's always going to be something new. There's always going to be something unique that comes up. And a lot of what that as operational as we got and operational spending and knowing all the details of what we want, we always kept an eye in our planning process and in our planning development of the process. What's the process? That if something changes, we can just incorporate that into the process and follow that along to the end, wherever it got changed. I do, again, one of the things, along those lines that I want to note is that, you think about debris and you think about houses destroyed. So, the first thing people tend to think of is, okay, so get a front end loader, fill it up, pull it in, get a big container, dump it on the container, and clear the pile. How hard could that be? And the reality is, when you really think about it, the nuance of the laws that apply in the reality, you're looking at houses. Some houses have been in some of these areas from 1940s, 1950s. They might be had asbestos in certain parts of the house. That has to be attended to. That has to be taken care of. You can't just go scoop it up and dump it someplace. Paying attention to the vegetative debris that some areas we're concerned about. The ancient longhorn beetle. In some areas, we want to make sure that we always make sure that we're recycling stuff that we can recycle. Again, we want to pay attention to all those and just lump it all together and try to move on as possible. So if you go to the next slide, the key to all of this is our emergency operations center. That is essentially the nerve center that ties together the myriad of operations, different simultaneous operations that are going on across the entire city. And it gives us a single location where we can have 150 plus of our closest partners, be it from the federal level, from the state level, and nonprofits, and of course, even especially the private sector sitting there with us to help us collect information that we with us has been an incredibly successful partnership and relationship with a broad array of private sector partners. And we know, working on regional catastrophic spending grant here in the city and in the region, we know that there are a number of models for how public-private partnerships can exist, whether it's an independent business emergency operations center or single seat representing the private sector. The way we've gone and our approach has been to not limit interaction of the private sector with us by keeping them in the same room or by having only one person try to speak for multiple industries. We've decided that we're going to have industry groups sitting with us in the EOC to advocate for and facilitate the operations of their industry. And it's been we think it's a resounding success because for us it's not about controlling information and then handing it out in a way that makes us powerful. We want it as much fit as possible. We want these individual organizations and industries to be as resilient as possible on their own, to leverage the information that they can get from the EOC and to go out and use that in order to make sure that they have as much access to the information as possible. What you see here is slide. This is our private sector role within the EOC to work under emergency support functions in the New York City EOC. So we have, and it doesn't exactly translate to what you would find in NIMS, although most of it overlap. Transportation, public safety, health and medical, human services, infrastructure, utilities, private sector, and regional coordination. And each one of these areas is integrated not just by federal or state or by tier, but really by function. We want to make sure that everyone's communicating with each other. And here you see, of course, Mayor Bloomberg talking with members of the private sector, ESF, emergency support function team, representing a large number of organizations. Just to list them. Actually, if you go to the next slide. So this is just a few of our partners that are sitting with us in the EOC. What I tried to do with this slide is really reflect one of the key elements for us in integrating private sector into ESF, and that they're having this forceful curve. So we've gone with organizations within our EOC. This month, Securities Industry and Financial Markets Association, the Hotel Association of New York, Food Industry Alliance. These are trade organizations that represent hundreds and thousands of individual businesses. And so while we don't have room certainly in our EOC to have all of the 200,000 businesses, each center represented and communicate with them in the EOC, we want to make sure that they have a conduit, that they know who their liaison is in the EOC, and they can turn around and talk to us. Some of the individual companies that you see on here, like Target and Walmart, we don't have in our EOC, but we do talk to them. We do incorporate them into conference calls on a regular basis to make sure that we're aligned, given their resources that they can make available to us during an event. NYU, you see up there, NYU represents the university consortium of the private universities in the city, representing 17 universities, each of which have enrollments that range from 8,000 people up to 40,000. And so it gives us the opportunity with a single message to that consortium to share information with them and to make sure that we're addressing the needs of a potentially vulnerable population. You have students who are in dormitories, students who are from the area. We want to make sure that universities are empowered to work with them and handle them instead of having them push them into our shelters. It is a robust and dynamic engagement in the EOC. We brought in different organizations who represented their different industries and their different groups, including Building Owners and Managers Association and the Real Estate Board representing the real estate industry, the consortium of the Hotel Association representing all the hotels in New York City, Small Business Service that represents businesses, small businesses, the New York State Insurance Department representing the insurance companies. We had uniquely enough, the Alliance for Response, who was sitting in our ESD with us, and they already linked for us to the cultural institutions in the city. Are hundreds and hundreds of museums and cultural institutions that could find themselves in vulnerable positions, and many did. Many had collections that were severely impacted. We wanted to make sure that they were tied closely to us in the EOC. Legal administrators representing the, I should insert the appropriate lawyer joke here, but the reality is that in New York City we have a lot of law firms, and it's a pretty big important business base for us in addition to the financial industry, the financial sector. So they represent thousands of employees and hundreds of. Of course, we have connections, and we incorporated into our private sector, the private sector, JetBlue, who represented and gave us insight into the airline industry and essentially chaired a airline consortium, providing us information about the connecting us with the various airlines and activities and their needs of the United Nations, and of course with the New York the Roadrunners Association in those first couple of days. You probably remember the challenge and the question about the marathon that was going on. We were talking to them, and it goes beyond just whether or not the marathon should be run or was run or wouldn't be run, but they have significant resources that they had prepared for the marathon, including access to many hotel rooms, and so we wanted those a big partnership for us to be able to work with them and incorporate them directly into our call during that kickoff, and again making sure that not only did we do a call to educate people, but we were turning it. It was a two-way call. We were taking in information. It gives us insight into actions and issues that are going on across the entire city. And that's just fun. It's not just about us posting information or displaying information. It's about us being able to collect information and understand what the impacts are across the city. What we talked about on those calls, just to give people a little bit of insight, we were doing daily transportation updates, making sure people understood exactly what the response was looking like, situational awareness, but what we were also doing was bringing subject matter experts onto the phone to answer the questions, and this was key for us. We had an EOC Con Edison representative, we had Verizon representative, and this was an opportunity for these organizations to get on the phone with private sector industry groups and explain exactly what was happening. We weren't acting as a buffer. We didn't try to get involved or translate for anyone. We wanted to make sure they could hear subject matter experts. But at the end of the day, what's so important to one of our general beliefs in terms of our public-private partnerships is that we are doing our best to empower our contacts and the folks who we relate to in the private sector in front of their executives, in front of their partners. So the ability for someone in the industry group to come back and say, we were on a conference call, we heard from Con Ed, this is what up it is, that empowers them, and that enhances their reputation almost in front of the folks in their organization, and we want to make sure that we can support that. Because it doesn't need to be us. We want to make sure that everyone is getting the right information from the right people. And we've seen it happen again and again. And Irene and Sandy, comments coming out, it was very easy for us. As soon as Con Ed started talking about the energizing certain zones in advance or transportation. I can't stress that enough. We strive to have not just people who are sitting in DOC, not just people who are sitting in these seats who represent these industries. We're not looking for someone to just take notes and pass along. We're looking for subject matter experts and industry experts who can tell us what the needs are of their group and pull that information out in a format. So if it's the securities industry and they're focused on transportation and power for whether or not the market's going to be open, and we can talk to them about that. That's one way to translate it. For the Building Owners and Managers Association, their experts brought to our attention some questions that we were able to help them answer from DEP. For the life of me, I never would have thought quite about the challenges or the regulations around pumping water out of basins that might have been fixed with something that was putting something other than water that might have been in that basement. But these guys were able to raise questions for us so that we could go and get their industry and answer. And instead of having 35,000 different building managers trying to figure out what they're going to do on their own, we were able to help them facilitate that straight answer from Department of Environmental Conservation and Department of Environmental Protection about permitting and about regulatory relief in some areas. And that was a big success because that made the reoccupancy of the building that much closer and that much quicker. Part of what we had to talk about, of course, is if you go to the next slide, it's about access, understanding where people can go and when people can get there, what do different parts mean. Part of the challenge for us is that we try to be advocates for the private sector in the ESF and in the EOC. We're not sitting there just passing along information, but we're sitting there trying to inform the decision makers at City Hall and in the executive suite of the agencies about the needs of the private sector as in terms of getting access back to their building and making sure that they should be occupied specific areas. We spend a lot of time debating and looking at the travel restrictions. At the end of the day, the decision we made, City Hall made, was to implement some HOV restrictions, high occupancy vehicle restrictions to Lower Manhattan. There were no exceptions. Didn't matter how, whether you were a doctor or nurse, a trader, a $50 million trader for Goldman Sachs. There were no exceptions. And part of that was, part of that challenge was, of course, explaining to people why they weren't allowed in and what the different challenges were. And we were able to do that. And simply, the bottom line for us in Lower Manhattan is physically there isn't room for all the people who drive their vehicle into Lower Manhattan if there weren't those restrictions. So, we still need to make sure that we have the resources. If you go to the next slide, I just wanted to take you through a couple of the things that we did and how we sort of engage with the private sector. You see the inundation areas, the areas covered in blue, the city that experience water. If you go to the next slide, so there were a lot of different operations that were going on in the course of this event, and I want to credit our logistics team here at OEM for developing this a couple of these incredible slides that really pull the picture together for us. But you can see here, each one of those shelters was an independent operation, handling hundreds, if not thousands of people on any given day, with helping them with resources and making sure that they had a comfortable environment. Special medical needs shelters were housing thousands of patients that were placed from nursing homes, the Rockaways hospitals in Lower Manhattan. But the communication and our ability to talk to our private sector partners throughout this event helped us make sure that we could get resources where we needed to. One particular example I thought was great. I got a call. We have a very active logistics operation here, and so it's always an interesting balance in the public-private emergency support function and logistics because in some locations across the country private component is really their sourcing. Where they're going to turn to get supplies. We look primarily at our public-private partnership as a resiliency support. We're not necessarily looking for what you can provide. We're looking for you to get back up as possible, that you can get you can get back to business and doing what you do every single day. And so our logistics folks have contracts and New York City has requirements contracts for almost anything that you can imagine. But of course, there are emergencies that come up, and we had a special medical needs shelter that the lost its ability to wash the towels, and they needed hundreds of towels for the special medical needs patients that they had in their shelter. And so we were able to turn to our hotel association and say, we need 500 towels as soon as possible. And one quick email, a couple phone calls, and we had a list of pickup sites. We could do one quick round to the city with 15 different hotels, each contributing a nice number of towels, and drop it off in the end of a couple of hours. We were able to solve that problem. Again, reaching out to our partnership and getting it done where we needed to fix it. And along with those towels in countries, shampoo and soap, etc., that were distributed to shelters for operations. So some of our shelterees commented about some of the really fancy bars of soap and shaving kits that they got that they were really impressed with our ability to distribute fancy supplies. We had to quickly make sure that there wasn't that. But ultimately, we were proud of that relationship and how we were able to connect with them. Whether sandbags or electric blankets that our target partners helped acquire. We had a sudden need for electric blankets that exceeded pretty much any contract any vendor that was out there, and we turned to our target partners, and they were able to support us and modify some of their standard operating procedures in order to make things happen. But again, it's not just about supplies. It's about partnerships and broader resources. And if you go to the next slide, one of the key elements to our engagement post Sandy was making sure that people had the food and water that they needed in the areas that were impacted. So we set up significant food distribution, food truck operations, feeding the public. And you can see all these different locations, and these are not haphazardly placed. It's not done based on political will or favors. We wanted to make sure, that we understood exactly what areas needed the resource and how we would be able to provide it to them. And so we leverage our relationship with the private sector to accomplish that. If you go to the next slide, one of the things that we did pretty quickly, well, I shouldn't say pretty quickly, but it came to us after 2 weeks in, we're starting to provide. So we're providing food and water. We're looking to go to that next level and understand where we're going to establish these long-term feeding operations. We work with the Restaurant Association as part of our emergency support function, Industry Alliance as part of our emergency support function, and the Department of Health and Mental Hygiene, who here in the city is responsible for evaluating and testing every food service establishment in the city. And we took the data that they had and we ran it against a couple of lists, looking at the zip codes that were impacted by and the areas that were impacted by inundation, and ultimately we took that list of a couple thousand service establishments and put it and use the service that we have. Bedboard now is one we use, the auto dialer. We created a message. We created a simple message that said, we're trying to collect data about commodity and food distribution in impacted areas. That's one, if you're open limited service, screen here, or if you're closed. And did that all the dialer. And in the span of a couple of, what turned out to be roughly 30 minutes, we were able to collect significant amounts of data that we had talked about, maybe getting people to go door to door. How do we understand what's open, what's closed, what do we need for resources? And we were able to really get an idea. You could see this particular map. Some areas had green. We knew that those had great access. We didn't need to go set up a food site in that area to eat with the businesses that had managed to recover and get reopened. But other areas where we knew there were thousands, there were hundreds of businesses and restaurants that should have been answering and weren't answering or answered in the negative. We knew that we had some challenges. You can look at for Rockaway over there, the Rockaways in the bottom right, and really see that there was a significant gap in stores that were even able to provide resource information back to us. And some of that, of course, is impacted infrastructure, and some of that is sort of outliers. But at the end of the day, it gave us an idea of where to start. We made a couple times and ultimately followed up. Of course, one of the lessons learned through this whole thing, and it sort of dawned on me as we were going into our third round of it, is that I typically hang up when I get an auto dial at home. When I answer the phone and I hear someone, some robotic voice, and so we paid particular attention to that need and that concern that people might just be hanging up because they didn't want to get a robocall, and we transitioned to a call center with our department of taxation. The New York State Department of Taxation, Finance, the taxation call center. We made sure that they didn't call up and leave with the hi, we're calling about taxes. But it was important for us to have that personal outreach without additional information. And again, that helps us make decisions, helps us really guide how we're going to go about the answers. If you go to the next slide, just a quick word jumble. The larger the word, the more often it was requested and needed. Store logistics and store private sector partners, fuel, blanket, porta potties. That's the key one, and of course generators, light towers. But all through and I'll go through a couple slides to give a perspective of what was out there. And in every single situation, we were trying to work with our private sector partners, support them, not only integrate their resources. There were a lot of organizations that were up and operational and were seeking to find just that pathway, that single pathway in order to support the public sector and in order to support the social impact of the right way. And then if you go to the next slide, some of the things that we went through to focus you a little bit of the data. 2,600 requests for more than 1.6 million individual items. I mean, there were requests that were coming for things of all shapes and sizes. Our logistics center was working round the clock for a couple months, just trying to process all those needs. Go to the next slide. I put the slide about our logistics staging area in there because I wanted to highlight, something that we're really proud of in terms of engagement with the project, and that's our relationship with the New York City Met. As all of you can imagine, we are at a premium here in New York City for flat open space. And I should say, there's a couple of parking lots here and there in Manhattan aren't ideal for setting up a staging area, bringing in resources, and really moving it around in an efficient way. The Mets organization, the New City Field, has big parking lots out there, and when we approached them about the opportunity to partner with them and plan in advance for leveraging their resources, they welcomed us with open arms. They wanted to be a partner with us, and again, this was a way for us to reflect our idea in public-private partnership that it's not about an organization providing material or donating material or writing us a check. That comes across in many parts of the country or many other operations where people feel access. So that's the purpose of having a public-private partnership. the parking lots available that much longer. If you go to the next slide, our restoration centers. This was another example of how on the fly we modified some of our existing plans. Had a very robust disaster service plan, and we modified that into what we call restoration centers with 30,000 people served, 70,000 small businesses being able to walk into the center and get the services that they need, get to have access to combat representation and Verizon, get access to all the support that they need. But it's about also making sure that we have those resources. If you go to the next slide, again, going back to that mass meeting, it was a big operation, but we always had to do it in the context of how do we make sure that we're not hurting the small businesses and the restaurants that are getting back up and running. Now, constant attention paid to the fact that we do not want to stymie any recovery that was going on their part. We wanted to make sure we had resources. And as soon as we found out, as soon as we realized that construction workers were bypassing the open subway shop to go get the free lunch, down the block, we shut down that distribution site. If it's available, we're all about people who need the resource getting it, but not at the expense necessarily of the businesses that are trying to make that comeback. If you go to the next slide, again, some of you might have recalled that it was one of the larger challenges that we faced. BC Point with a significant fire the night before we hit that destroyed a significant number of homes in the local community, and recovery from that has been challenging, and we're continuing for them on a regular basis. I have two more slides that I want to throw up there, and it talks about it talks a little bit to some of what we looked at after the storm, not only from the private sector, but and a lot of the the question you see here, 71% of the New Yorkers surveyed heard the evacuation announcement. If you move to the next slide, you'll see that only 29% of those actually decided, who were in zone A, decided to evacuate. And part of that is understanding. Part of our challenge is understanding why people make the decisions that they do, so we can modify our plans, so we can incorporate change and address them. And if you go to the next slide, let's click it one more time. Yeah, there we go. Here's essentially that breakdown of why people decided not to evacuate. And everyone has an excuse and everyone has a reason. And part of our approach, we're doing something similar with our private sector partners, and for our partners in the preparedness program, and trying to understand the decision points. But our approach in the private sector is to ask these questions and then build a solution that's going to prevent it from occurring in the future. So we want to make sure that if people, if someone in the private sector, someone in the small business that they didn't know that they were in an evacuation zone, we don't want that just going forward. We want to make sure that we communicate with them as quickly as possible, and make sure we share this information. If people had issues, they didn't have any transportation or had medical issues, our approach now is to really make sure that we address these concerns in advance and set folks up for a positive experience going forward. And with that, I think we have. I think that is my last slide. Here's the last slide. The damage was significant. The work that we did with the private sector was fundamentally the execution of a lot of years of planning, of collaboration, of understanding and relationship building. It's not something I think that you can just flip on and figure out how to do during an event. It takes an investment well in advance of the storm, well in advance of that, the 2 days to 3 days notice that you can have. The follow and modify your response and your approach to any emergency. There are certainly a number of challenges and issues that we worked on that I didn't get a chance to discuss. I hope they come out during the Q&A session. But thank you very much for giving us the opportunity to talk about our experience, talk about how we did private sector after Sandy, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Now's your chance to ask any questions you want of Ira. And as a reminder, there's two ways to participate in this part of the webinar. You can click on the hand icon on your window panel, which will tell us that you want your phone unmuted, or you can type in your question to us, and we'll read them out to Ira. Ira, we do have a couple questions here so far. One of them is, do you have any plans for phase 2 streamline and provide full waivers so out-of-state volunteers on without
which waivers?
Tolls for the tolls coming into the state.
So the question of volunteer and donation management is something that we pay particular attention to. I haven't heard of that challenge of the tolls being a barrier to access, but certainly it's something that we're happy to work with our organizations and here to make sure that we support them. So the key to us for us is for anyone with a challenge to be able to access the EOC through their right conduit. And I can tell you that when we had challenges with for people coming into the city, if there was someone from an organization that was supporting the infrastructure or utilities that came up to the utility emergency support function right over to the public transportation desk, and working together in the EOC with our transportation agencies, were able to solve pretty much any problem as soon as they got to our bridges or tunnels.
And you talked a bit about how you communicated and worked closely with the federal government. Can you speak to how you coordinated with the federal government?
Sure. So the federal government is a partner with us on many levels, and in some ways, for some of our operations, we see them primarily as a vendor. Right? They're a source. If we have a resource that we need, we can essentially go to them and identify that resource. But the key for us is understanding what they bring to the table, having that relationship in advance, so we sit down with our federal partners and understand how they would tie in or could tie in, and ultimately having the right representative, from FEMA, and especially in this particular case, HHS, Health and Human Services, really supported us with healthcare facility evacuation and making resources available so that we can convert shelters and some buildings that we had available to us into temporary locations.
I just want to jump in here. This is Dina, and just say that we work with the federal government, our federal partners, every day in planning and preparedness. They're an integrated member of all of our planning teams. But I think what was interesting with Sandy is that our federal partners helped us get some innovations done that were never done before, and that was primarily because they were sitting with us at the most senior levels with us on our task forces and making critical decisions with us to allow us to use funding and to, for example, we had a problem with the bridge, but we provided U.S. Army Corps generators to private sector buildings. This is not normally done, but if we were to evacuate one of our high-rise buildings with several thousand people and have to take them into either sheltering or hotels, that would have been an overwhelming pressure on on the city. And, our federal partners understood that and waived that requirement. They changed the rules for us on the fly. We did the same with some of our dewatering operations and so forth, and our housing operations. So yes, we work very closely with them, and this has been a unique Cindy has been a unique opportunity where we've actually done new things, new ways of doing this. Here's another question that we have. How did catastrophic training grant efforts do in responding to Cindy? I think I'll give you one simple example. They helped us across many of our ESFs, but I'll give you a simple example. As the storm was coming, our EOC was fully packed with all of our agency partners, and our concern was elevated around populations with special needs. And what we did was, and this is the first time we activated that particular task force, we pulled out of our regional sheltering plan special needs task force. We have our plan is set up like almost a workbook. It's very action-oriented. So we just pulled out the relevant pages. I turned them over to our commissioner of the mayor's office with people with disabilities, assigned an OEMer to the team, and asked them to start working those issues so that we can address and be in front of special needs issues. And one of the things that we did, which was never done before, is through that special needs task force, we were able to secure an interpreter that was on all of the mayor's briefings. And you've probably seen those interpreters and maybe seen the slides of them. Very animated, very interesting, which was a first for us. And as a matter of fact, it was pointed out to me later that even when President Obama had his press conference, there were no interpreters there. So it was quite a contrast. And we were very pleased to institute that. So this was an example of using a tool that was created with regional catastrophic planning grant funds that was specifically used in Sandy. Okay, Gina, and then I've got a question here about how you coordinated with New York, and Jane Caller also wanted to know how you may have coordinated with New Jersey and the New Jersey private sector, especially for critical resources.
So I'll say this, listen, we have a section of our UC that's dedicated to regional coordination. So we had representatives from New York State sitting with us as a conduit, as a link to the State Emergency Operations Center, making sure that all the requests that we were making through the state were processed appropriately and giving us insight into resources and capabilities that they brought to bear. The same goes for FEMA. We typically have a seat available for NASA in New Jersey, and in this particular event, everyone was pretty wrapped up. The reality is that we dealt very, very closely with New Jersey. The New Jersey DOT to pass along and their private sector that any issues that came that impacted both New York City and New Jersey.
I just want to mention here that in terms of our state partners being integrated with us, we had a call with the senior leadership from the state. So Commissioner Howard was on with us, and Tony Sutton pretty much every day. I think it was a 5 o'clock call with our commissioner and our first deputy and the team members, just dealing with and making sure all of our issues were addressed, and pretty much we had tremendous support from the state.
Yeah, I just wondered, I know we're running out of time, but I do want to, identify a particular scenario that came up, and that was one of our private sector partners that we work with on a regular basis from the food industry side, White Rose, is based in New Jersey, and they supplied thousands of stores during New York City. And in New York, I mean, we had a limitation. It's just a delivery system where our stores need to be replenished, every couple of days. And so generators have been impacted, and they needed support and resources. Otherwise, they would be significantly impaired. And part of that challenge is where do we get that resource from? We know that downstream and them suspending service would eventually lead to air shells in New York City. But have could we take and divert a resource and a priority resource in the city? Ultimately, we were able to pair them up with New Jersey, and they had already spoken to part of those conversations, but we all worked together to make sure that they got the resources that they need. Because so many different operations go on outside our state boundaries, but ultimately to support our operations here in the city.
And I would like to say there was one gap, I guess, you could call it that. We have built a regional emergency conference call process that any member of our regional catastrophic planning team in New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, and Pennsylvania can request a conference call with the senior leaders. We did not use that effectively as effectively as we could have. So although we were talking with our partners, we did not convene. New York did not request to convene this regional emergency conference call, and I don't believe any of our other partners did either, which we would have certainly participated if it had been requested. I think we missed some opportunities there, particularly we could have possibly gotten ahead of the gas crisis by learning, New Jersey's operation, which was the odd even numbers. That would have helped us. Perhaps we would have implemented that strategy a little bit earlier had we had that conference call. So yeah, there a lot of things worked well, and I think there were some gaps.
Opportunities for
that we missed. Yeah.
Another question here. Were federal credentialing efforts at the Disaster Recovery Center helpful for your recovery efforts?
So say that again?
Were federal credentialing efforts at the Disaster Recovery Center helpful in the recovery efforts?
What's credential?
Well, sure. If the question is whether resources with PIV-I cards, whether that made a difference in integrating them into the operation, I would say off the top of my head that no, that we weren't looking, we did not look for those, use those as as credentials to determine someone's access or support. We worked with a lot of organizations who identified who were responsible for their staff that they were seeing, but we weren't looking at, my knowledge, those credentials as access qualifiers.
Thank you. We had a question on our webinar yesterday with New Jersey that I think is worth repeating. Ira, what advice do you have for private sector and state and local government going forward in their own preparation efforts?
Talk now. I would say that's the key. And it's sort of the old cliche in emergency management. Don't exchange business cards during an emergency. But it goes without saying that almost everything that happens in the course of an emergency happens at a quick pace, and you really end up engaging more freely with partners who you established and relationships that exist, rather than ones that just come out of the blue. It's much harder to get integrated from nowhere during an emergency.
Yeah, and we're not talking here about people knowing Ira specifically or Dina specifically. We're talking about establishing a track, a process through which that communication flows.
I think I will second that. That's so critical. It's about making these relationships institutional. It's about ensuring that there's here the private sector emergency support function that will happen whether IRA is here or not. And it's hard for people to do that. But it's incredibly important as an organization that some of these partnerships might start off as based on personal relationships, but you have to find a way to institutionalize those so they can beyond just that individual or with that individual.
Sure, that's fantastic advice. I appreciate that so much. And I wanted to, on behalf of the All-Hazards Consortium, thank you, Dina, thank you, Ira, as well as your team at NJ and OEM for putting together this webinar for our audience and providing us with this information. And I wanted to remind the audience, too, that we will be following up with you with a copy of the link to this webinar so you can forward it on to others who would be interested in listening to this. And hope you guys get some relief up there in New York. We just had a 5-minute downpour in Montgomery County, Maryland. Hopefully that's going too, but I wish you the best. Be safe, and thank you again, and look forward to having you in a future webinar. And this is today's webinar. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the opportunity.
The organizer has ended the session, and this call will be disconnected.